The chamber of the Galactic Council was a cathedral of arrogance, its vaulted dome inlaid with silver constellations and the banners of 100 species rippling in artificial currents. Beneath that gilded ceiling, the representatives of Earth stood alone in the circle of judgment, a cluster of men draped in the sober grays of their delegation. Ambassador Marcus Hale held himself rigid, jaw tight, as the presiding voice of the council reverberated across the hall. The verdict was already known. The ritual of condemnation was merely for spectacle. Humanity, the alien speaker intoned, its tones translated into clipped syllables by embedded translators, is hereby stripped of representation. By majority decree, Earth is banished from this council for violations of trust, reckless militarization, and insubordination against the collective will. A murmur rippled through the tiers of alien envoys. Some radiated amusement, others disdain. Few hid their satisfaction. Hale let the words settle before raising his eyes, cold and sharp, to the assembly. His voice, when it came, was iron-wrapped in courtesy. "You speak of trust as though it is yours to grant," he said. "But trust is not born of submission. You claim our weapons make us dangerous. You are correct. We are dangerous because we learned too well what happens when power is held only by others." The chamber shifted uneasily. Hale's gaze swept the tiers, memorizing faces twisted in mockery. "You tell us we are unfit. Very well. Then remember this. When next you look outward, do not mistake our absence for silence. Earth will not beg for a place at your table. We will build our own." The guards moved forward, for towering reptilian soldiers in ceremonial armor. Hale and his delegation were ushered from the chamber, but he walked with his head high, each step an act of defiance. The council's laughter followed them into the corridors, thin and poisonous. Back on Earth, a world away from those marble halls of alien dominion, the mood was raw and electric. In the underground chamber beneath Geneva's fortified government complex, Chancellor David Rourke gathered his council of war. A tall man with a square jaw carved as though from granite, Rourke carried the gravity of command in every word. The delegates had barely sat when he began. "They've cast us out. Good. I'd rather know where we stand than live under their mockery. But understand this, banishment is not exile. It is a declaration. They will move against us because they fear what we can become." General Adrian Kessler leaned forward, his uniform taut across broad shoulders. "Their fleets dwarf ours. If they strike while we're unprepared, Earth won't last a season." Dr. Elias Navarro, gray-haired and restless, tapped his fingers on the table. "Unless we advance faster than they believe possible. Their mistake was thinking banishment would weaken us. In truth, they've untied our hands." Rourke nodded, eyes narrowing. "Then we make use of every resource, every mind, every ounce of labor Earth can summon. Not for defense alone. Not for survival. For power. If they deny us a place in their order, then we'll build an order of our own." Silence lingered, heavy with the weight of what he demanded. Hale broke it, voice lower now but steadier than in the council chamber. "They underestimated us in those marble halls. They will do so again. That will be their undoing." The council dispersed into action. Across Earth, lights blazed in shipyards long dormant, factories roared to life, and men who once crafted passenger liners turned their hands to forging warships. In the asteroid belt, miners swore oaths to the Terran cause, carving out steel and rare alloys for the ships that would be the nation's lifeblood. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. The Council's dismissal had not broken humanity's spirit but hardened it into something unyielding. Journalists whispered of a fleet of retribution. Soldiers spoke of the coming storm. In quiet pubs on the fringes of Earth cities, workers toasted to the day alien arrogance would shatter on Terran steel. Rourke stood often at the window of his command chamber, overlooking the sprawl of Earth's capital city. He saw the lights burning through the night, not in celebration but in toil. He thought of the laughter of the council, the sneers of those who had never known the humiliation of being called unworthy. He thought of their fleets, arrogant in their numbers, blind in their certainty. And he whispered, not for the room but for himself, "We'll show them what becomes of those who banish men who refuse to bow." The first outlines of a plan were etched into steel and sweat, but its shape was only beginning to form. For now, the fire had been lit, and the men of Earth were gathering around it. The Council believed they had consigned humanity to irrelevance. Instead, they had given them the very reason to rise. You said. The first months after banishment were chaos wrapped in resolve. Earth was not yet ready for the scale of ambition Chancellor Rourke demanded, but men across every continent bent themselves to the task. Shipyards once intended for commerce were seized by decree. Orbital stations became foundries of steel and fire. Factories in forgotten valleys howled with production, their workers driven not by pay, but by the conviction that the Council's laughter must be silenced with deeds. Out of the confusion rose a cadre of men whose names became synonymous with Earth's resurgence. General Adrian Kessler was one of them. He had fought in the quiet wars of Earth's fractured past and bore the discipline of a soldier who knew how fragile order could be. From his command bunker beneath Luna Base, he surveyed the sprawling blue planet and reminded every officer under him that failure would bring not conquest but extinction. He trained crews mercilessly, simulating battles against fleets 3 times their size, insisting that Earth's only hope lay in unpredictability and precision. His methods made enemies among bureaucrats, but his men spoke of him in reverence, calling him the Iron General. Then there was Dr. Elias Navarro, a man of science who despised compromise. His hair had gone silver at the temples, but his voice carried the restless urgency of youth. Navarro oversaw the Titan program, the most ambitious construction effort humanity had ever attempted. He ordered orbital rings assembled around Luna, each segment a cathedral of steel where ships the size of mountains would be birthed. Engineers protested the scale, politicians warned of bankruptcy, but Navarro silenced them with a single refrain: "We are building not for this decade, but for the next century." His designs were radical: dreadnought hulls reinforced with lattice armor, railguns capable of shattering asteroids, propulsion systems adapted from experimental gravity drives. Where the Council clung to doctrines centuries old, Navarro sought to leap forward in a single generation. Ambassador Marcus Hale, too, had not returned to quiet retirement after his speech of defiance. Stripped of titles, he remade himself as Earth's chief negotiator with its own people. He traveled from New Berlin to Nairobi, from the steel towns of the Americas to the domes of Mars, persuading leaders and workers alike to accept sacrifice. In speeches broadcast across the system, he promised no easy peace, but a future no alien would dictate. His words were flint, striking sparks in weary men until they believed themselves part of something larger than survival. Rourke watched these men with a strategist's eye. He allowed their temperaments to clash: Kessler's severity, Navarro's arrogance, Hale's sharp rhetoric, because together they formed a balance. Alone, each might have faltered. United, they were the architects of destiny. The conflict pressing against them was not abstract. Intelligence gathered by hidden probes confirmed that the Council monitored every signal from Earth, every flicker of construction in orbit. Scouts had been sighted near the belt, their ships vanishing when Terran patrols approached. The message was plain: Earth was being watched, and when the time was right, the Council would strike. In response, the Titan program accelerated beyond sanity. Men slept in their workshops, ate in their harnesses, lived among the fires of creation. The first of the dreadnoughts rose from Luna's orbit like leviathans. They bore names chosen not by tradition but by intent: Resolute, Vengeance, Defiance. When the engines of the Resolute flared for the first time, Kessler stood on the command deck beside Navarro, the 2 men silent in shared awe. The ship was not elegant. It was angular, brutal, a weapon disguised as a city. Crew selection became the next ordeal. Kessler demanded men with discipline, not reputation. He rejected seasoned veterans who failed his tests of adaptability and chose instead farmers' sons, miners, and cadets who had never left orbit. "The Council trains soldiers to obey," he told Rourke. "We will train them to think." Drills became legend. Crews practicing combat maneuvers until their ships seemed to breathe with one will, until even in simulation they outmaneuvered the predictable strategies of their instructors. Meanwhile, Hale carried the burden of unity. Strikes erupted as workers buckled under exhaustion. Food shortages bred anger. Hale walked among them, unguarded, listening before he spoke. "You are not bending steel for men like me," he told a crowd of welders in the Martian yards. "You are building the shields your children will live beneath, or die without." The strike ended the next morning. Months passed, and the fleet took shape. From Earth's orbit, a halo of warships gleamed like a crown of fire. Supply lines stretched from the asteroid belt to the icy moons of Jupiter, where fuel refineries worked without pause. The Council whispered of madness, but the whispers carried unease. Humanity, stripped of sanction, was achieving in years what had taken others centuries. In the Chancellor's chamber, Rourke convened his commanders as the first dreadnought wing reported combat readiness. The table before them glowed with holographic schematics, rows upon rows of Terran steel. "Gentlemen," Rourke said, voice low, "we are no longer building a fleet to survive. We are building a fleet to rule. The Council will not wait forever. They will come. When they do, we must not simply endure. We must make them bleed." Navarro exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the projection of his creations. "Then let us show them what becomes of those who mistake banishment for weakness." And for a moment, as silence filled the room, each man understood the shape of their struggle. They were no longer laboring in defiance alone. They were preparing for war. The laughter of the Council still echoed across memory, but soon enough, Earth would answer in thunder. The warning came not as rumor, but as cold fact. Terran intelligence relays picked up encrypted chatter from Council fleets mustering beyond Proxima. Hours later, a probe transmitted its final image before being destroyed. Armadas of alien warships, banners of 5 Council races arrayed under a single command, burning a course toward Sol. Their intent was undeniable. Humanity had grown too quickly, and the Council had chosen force to cut the route before it could spread. In Luna Command, General Kessler studied the projections with the composure of a man who had expected this day. "They're not here to warn us," he told the assembled officers. "They're here to make an example." His gaze swept the room, settling on Admiral Jonathan Vance, the quiet strategist who had been given command of the fleet. Unlike Kessler's iron rigidity, Vance's presence was calm, almost understated. His gray eyes betrayed no fear, only calculation. "Admiral," Kessler said, "the defense of our species is yours." Vance inclined his head, voice steady. "Then we'll meet them where the system bends in our favor. They'll expect us to cling to Earth like frightened children. We'll strike them at the edge, where the void is vast and their formations are vulnerable." The fleet mobilized within hours. From their docks above Luna, dreadnoughts lumbered free, destroyers forming wings around them like predators eager for the hunt. Crews strapped into their stations, hands steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. On the bridge of the Resolute, Vance stood at the forward viewport, his posture deceptively relaxed as his officers reported readiness. When the Council Armada breached Sol's periphery, their arrival was a blaze of energy signatures, thousands of ships advancing in rigid formation. Their doctrine was centuries old. Columns of cruisers flanked by battleships, carriers trailing behind like shepherds guarding flocks. To most, the sight would have been despair. To Vance, it was an opportunity. He gave the first order, without raising his voice. "Detach the wolf packs. Cut across their flank, target carriers first. Rail batteries, prepare saturation fire. No warnings, no signals. We strike without ceremony." The void erupted in violence. Terran destroyers darted forward, scattering across vectors the Council had not anticipated. From their hulls unleashed storms of kinetic rounds, slugs accelerated to fractions of light speed that tore through shields and shredded armor. Council carriers, designed to endure drawn-out engagements, crumpled under the unfamiliar ferocity. The enemy's formations faltered as commanders struggled to adapt. Vance moved his fleet like a conductor guiding an orchestra. He refused to meet the enemy head-on, instead slicing at their edges, forcing them into pursuit. Every time they shifted, railgun barges rained into the gaps their own rigidity created. Where the Council trusted doctrine, humans embraced chaos. Crews acted with initiative, executing maneuvers they had drilled 100 times under Kessler's merciless training. On the bridge of the alien flagship, confusion boiled into panic. They move without order. One commander hissed, unable to comprehend ships that fought as though guided by instinct rather than command chains. They do not fear collapse, they use it. The battle raged for hours. Wreckage littered the void, Council warships tumbling broken into darkness. Yet Terran ships bore scars as well. Destroyers gutted, dreadnought armor scorched and split. Every man aboard knew the cost, but none faltered. When the Council attempted a final desperate push toward Earth itself, Vance unleashed his last stratagem. "Bring the Defiance forward," he ordered. The massive dreadnought emerged from concealment behind a drifting asteroid, its silhouette blotting stars. Its forward batteries ignited, hurling a kinetic salvo that shattered the Council vanguard in a single cataclysmic barrage. The message was unmistakable. Earth's fleet did not defend. It annihilated. Silence settled over the comms as the remaining Council ships broke formation. Some fled, others surrendered their systems, unwilling to face more. Vance allowed it. "Let them run," he said. "Fear will carry our warning further than destruction ever could." When the survivors limped back toward Council space, they carried stories of impossible speed, weapons that defied doctrine, and men who fought as though exile had made them invincible. Humanity had not merely resisted, it had humiliated them. Back in Geneva, Chancellor Rourke stood before his war council, the glow of battle reports casting harsh light across his features. The victory was total, yet his expression remained grim. "Do not mistake this as an end," he told them. "The Council has learned fear, and fear breeds hatred. They will come again, in greater number, with greater fury. Our choice now is simple. Wait for them to crush us beneath endless waves, or ensure they never dare again." Hale leaned forward, eyes sharp. "And how do we ensure that?" Rourke's voice was low, but every man in the chamber felt its weight. "We stop being a people who merely endure. We must become something greater than a fleet, greater than a nation. If the Council would make us outcasts, then let us be outcasts who build an empire of our own." The words settled like a spark into waiting tinder. The men gathered knew the battle at Seoul was not the climax but the prologue. Humanity had proven itself on the field of war. What remained was to decide what kind of power it would wield in the galaxy that now feared it. "You said." The ruins of the Council fleet drifted in forgotten silence, but Earth did not pause to celebrate. Victory had bought them time, nothing more, and Chancellor Rourke understood better than anyone that time was a currency wasted if left unused. In the months that followed, orders rippled through every corner of the Terran system. Colonization convoys launched under heavy escort, carrying settlers to the fertile moons of distant gas giants. Mining operations pushed deeper into the belt, guarded by patrol squadrons that made even the boldest raiders think twice. What had once been a single homeworld became a network of outposts, colonies, and stations bound not by fragile treaties, but by loyalty to a shared defiance. Admiral Vance oversaw the expansion of the fleet with the same quiet precision he had shown in battle. His officers said he moved like a man who saw 20 steps ahead, each decision calculated to shape not only the present, but the century to come. When scouts from the lesser races began arriving in secret, seeking audiences with him, he received them without ceremony. They were species long cowed by the Council, smaller powers who had endured centuries of exploitation. Their envoys spoke in hushed tones, offering intelligence, trade, and even soldiers if Earth would extend its protection. Vance listened, then passed them to Rourke, who weighed each pledge with the cold logic of a builder assembling foundations. Rourke understood the paradox. To remain alone was to invite destruction, yet to lead was to risk becoming what they had once despised. He spent long nights in debate with Hale, the former ambassador now reimagined as Earth's voice beyond its borders. Hale argued that neutrality was a coffin, that survival demanded alliances, that humanity must shape the void before the void consumed them. Rourke agreed, though the gravity of the choice pressed on him. Empires are not born of charity, he said. They are born of necessity. If we lead, we must lead without apology. General Kessler made certain the men of Earth were ready for what leadership required. Training grew harsher, not softer, in the aftermath of victory. He reminded his soldiers daily that one triumph meant nothing if the next battle was lost. His camps echoed with the sound of drills, his orbital academies with the sharp commands of instructors who demanded both obedience and imagination. You are not fighting for a single world, he told recruits. You are the sword of a people who will never kneel again. Carry that weight, or be crushed by it. Navarro, meanwhile, lost himself in innovation. The Titan program evolved into something greater, a living engine of progress. His shipyards began to produce not merely warships but infrastructure for colonization, modular habitats, automated defenses, mobile foundries. He treated every blueprint as an act of defiance, every completed design a blow against the stagnation of the Council. Where others saw impossible timelines, Navarro saw a race against extinction. His eyes, bloodshot from sleepless nights, gleamed when he spoke of the future. They still measure us by what we were, he told his engineers. Let them choke on what we have become. The Council did not sit idle. Assassins were dispatched to destabilize Earth's leadership. Saboteurs struck at mining convoys, corrupting navigation beacons and scattering ships into traps. But Earth responded with ruthless efficiency. Intelligence networks rooted out spies, captured agents were interrogated, and those who plotted in shadows vanished into darker ones. Each failed strike only tightened the resolve of those who labored beneath Terran banners. The Council's efforts to weaken humanity instead hardened it into a singular force. As Earth expanded, its colonies did not view themselves as distant provinces, but as extensions of the same cause. Settlers on Titan raised the Terran flag above their ice domes with the same reverence as soldiers who saluted it in orbit. Miners on Ceres carved its crest into the walls of their tunnels. For the first time in history, scattered peoples felt themselves bound not by geography, but by destiny. Humanity's exile had forged not isolation but unity. At last, Rourke convened his council in the orbital capital above Earth, a ringed fortress city suspended against the velvet of space. The chamber overlooked the planet itself, blue and green beneath them, the origin of their struggle and the heart of their new dominion. Vance stood at his right, Kessler and Navarro at his left, with Hale positioned between them, the voices of war, science, and diplomacy united. Representatives of allied species occupied lower tiers, silent and watchful, their trust tentative but real. Rourke rose, and the chamber hushed. His voice carried the weight of banishment turned to triumph. They cast us out as dangerous children. They stripped us of voice, mocked our ambition, and sought to make us nothing. Yet look around you now. We are not nothing. We are the masters of our own fate, bound by no law but the one we choose to forge. If the Council would have us exiles, then so be it. Let them look to the stars and see not a scattered people, but an empire. The declaration resounded, not only in the chamber, but across every transmission beam to colonies and fleets. Men cheered in outposts where the night was endless. Soldiers slammed fists against armored chests. Workers in the shipyards shouted until their throats burned. It was not the birth of tyranny, but of belonging, a declaration that exile had transformed into sovereignty. As the voices rose, Rourke allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He saw Hale's eyes gleam with vindication, Kessler's expression carved into grim pride, Navarro's restless hands already sketching the ships of tomorrow, and Vance standing silent, watchful, as though already charting the battles that would test this new empire. These men, flawed yet resolute, had carried humanity from humiliation to dominion. Their story was not finished. The Council still loomed, still plotted, still hungered for Earth's downfall. But now humanity would not merely resist. It would command. Rourke's final words fell into silence. each syllable echoing across the chamber and into history. They banished us from their council. Now we rise as the Terran Empire, and the stars themselves will bear witness to what we build. And in that moment, the path ahead was clear. Not peace, not rest, but the relentless march of a people who had learned that banishment was the spark of destiny. You said,